I never expected her to remember my name, let alone say it like it mattered. It happened on a Tuesday, the kind that feels like it was copy-pasted from every other day of my life. Gray sky, cold wind that didn't commit to rain. My phone at 5% because I always forgot to charge it. And me walking into the same little laundromat on Maple Street like I didn't have anywhere else to be. I've been coming there for weeks, maybe months, long enough that the owners stopped asking if I needed change, long enough that I could tell which machines ate quarters and which ones hummed like they were tired. I dumped my clothes into washer 6, the one near the back, because it was quieter there. Less people, less small talk, less accidental eye contact. That's when I saw her. She was standing near the vending machine, holding a paper cup of coffee like it was keeping her steady. Mid-40s, maybe older. Not in a dramatic way. Just grown. The kind of woman who looked like she'd already lived through the messy parts of life and didn't need to advertise it. Her hair was pulled back in a loose clip. A few strands had slipped free near her temples. She wasn't trying to look younger. She didn't have to. She looked familiar, but my brain didn't place her until she turned slightly, and I saw the small scar near her eyebrow. That's when it hit me. Mrs. Hale, my friend's mom. Or technically my friend's stepmom, but no one said it like that. It always sounded like you were pointing out a flaw. I hadn't seen her since high school. Back when my friend Ryan used to invite me over after basketball practice, and his mom would walk through the kitchen in socks, holding a dish towel, asking if we'd eaten anything besides trash. She looked up, and for a second she didn't react, like she was flipping through old memories and deciding whether I belonged in them. Then she said, "Ethan." I froze. Actually froze. Like my body needed permission to move again. "Yeah," I said, clearing my throat. "Yeah, it's me." She smiled, small and surprised. Not the kind of smile people do out of politeness. It looked like something that happened to her without her planning it. "I thought so," she said. "You got taller." "I think I was already tall." "No," she said, like she was certain. "You were skinny and angry." That made me laugh, but it came out quiet, like I didn't want to disturb the place. I rubbed the back of my neck. I didn't know what to do with my hands, so I shoved them into my hoodie pocket and pretended I was calm. She took a sip of her coffee and glanced at the washers, like she was checking if hers were still running. Then her eyes landed back on me. "You live around here?" she asked. "Yeah, not far." I hesitated. I moved into Ryan's old street, actually. Just renting. Her eyebrows lifted slightly, like she didn't expect that. "Huh," she murmured. "That's close." The way she said close didn't feel like geography. It felt like something else. I looked down at my laundry bag, suddenly aware of how pathetic my life probably looked from the outside. A guy in his 20s doing laundry alone on a Tuesday afternoon, pretending it was normal. She leaned her hip against the counter and watched the dryers spin like they were hypnotizing her. "You still talk to Ryan?" she asked. My throat tightened a little. "Not really," I admitted. "He moved. We just drifted." She nodded like she understood too well. Like drifting wasn't a surprise, just something that happened when people got older and tired. There was a silence after that. Not awkward exactly, just heavy, like we both had things we could say, but neither of us wanted to make them real. I noticed her hands then, the way she held the cup. Her fingers were slender, but not delicate. Hands that had done work. Hands that had probably held people together. Without thinking, I started folding a napkin from the counter into a neat square. Then I unfolded it, then folded it again, like my body needed something to do while my brain tried to stay normal. She noticed. Her eyes flicked down to the napkin and then back up to me. "You always did that," she said. "What?" "That nervous folding thing." Her mouth curved slightly. "You did it at the dinner table once, and Ryan's dad told you to stop making paper origami sadness." I laughed again, but this time it stuck in my chest. I didn't know why it hit me so hard. This woman remembering a tiny thing about me, like I wasn't just another face that disappeared. Then her phone buzzed. She checked it, and her expression changed. Not fear, not panic, just caution. She typed something quickly, then looked up at me again. For a moment, she just stared, like she was deciding whether to say something she couldn't take back. Then she stepped closer, lowering her voice even though no one else was near us. "Ethan," she said softly, "don't come here when he's home." I blinked. "What?" But she didn't explain. She just picked up her laundry basket, and before she walked away, her eyes met mine one last time, steady, warning, and strangely tender. And a second later, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. It was her. I shouldn't have said that out loud, but I meant it. I stared at the text like it was going to change if I blinked hard enough. I shouldn't have said that out loud, but I meant it. The laundromat suddenly felt too bright, too open, like the spinning dryers were watching me. I typed back without thinking. What do you mean? The message stayed on delivered for a long time. Long enough for me to move my clothes into the dryer. Long enough to pretend I was normal. Long enough to check my phone every 30 seconds like an idiot. Then it buzzed again. Just don't. Please. No explanation. No emoji. No softness to hide behind. It was the kind of message you send when you're trying to keep something from becoming real. I should have left it there. I should have respected the warning, folded my life back into its usual quiet shape, and gone home to my apartment where the only sound was the refrigerator clicking on and off like it had opinions. But instead, that night, I found myself walking past Ryan's old street. Not to her house, just past it, like I was testing my own weakness. Her porch light was on, the same warm yellow glow I remembered from years ago. The kind that made a house look like it had someone inside waiting for you, even when you knew it didn't. I stopped across the road, hands in my pockets, staring like a creep. Then the front door opened. She stepped out holding a trash bag, wearing a cardigan over what looked like an old t-shirt. Her hair was down this time, messy in a way that didn't feel styled. She didn't look like someone's mom. She looked like someone who'd been awake too long. She froze when she saw me. I felt my face heat up instantly. Hey, I said like it was casual, like I hadn't been standing there for 10 seconds too long. Her eyes narrowed slightly, but not in anger. More like she was trying to figure out if she should be worried or flattered. You live nearby, she said, almost to herself. Yeah, I replied. I was just walking. She didn't move for a moment. The trash bag hung from her hand like it suddenly weighed too much. Then she exhaled and walked down the steps, heading toward the curb. I met her halfway, without thinking, and reached for the bag. I got it, I said. Her fingers tightened for half a second before she let go. Thank you, she murmured. We stood there near the bins, close enough that I could smell her shampoo, something clean like lavender or soap. Nothing expensive, just real. She crossed her arms, and I noticed a faint bruise on her wrist, yellowing at the edges, like she grabbed something too hard, or someone had. I didn't ask. I didn't know if I was allowed to. Instead, I nodded toward the house. Is Ryan here? Her jaw shifted, like my words touched a bruise that wasn't visible. No, she said. He hasn't been home in months. I blinked. Wait, I thought he moved out. He did. She paused. Ryan's father is home. The way she said father sounded like a label she hated wearing. Something in my chest tightened. The warning suddenly made sense. Don't come here when he's home. I swallowed. Is he okay? Her eyes met mine, and for the first time, she didn't look like someone older than me. She looked tired. He's not a bad man, she said slowly. Just a loud one. That was the most honest sentence I'd heard in weeks. I nodded because I didn't trust my mouth. She stared at the sidewalk, then gave a quiet laugh, dry, almost embarrassed. You know what's funny? She said. What? I used to think once you hit 40, you'd stop feeling stuck. She glanced at me, like your life would finally feel like it belonged to you. I didn't answer right away. I didn't want to ruin it with something stupid. Instead, I said softly, does it? She shook her head, almost smiling. No, she whispered. You just get better at pretending it does. The silence after that felt intimate. Not romantic. Not yet. Just two people standing in the dark, sharing something neither of us had planned to say. A car passed. The headlights swept over us, and for a second I saw her face clearly. Every line, every softness, every unspoken thing she carried. I imagined, stupidly, what it would feel like to touch her hand, to see if she would pull away. Then her phone buzzed from inside her pocket. She flinched, and that small movement, so instinctive, so practiced, made my stomach drop. She looked at the house again. I should go in, she said. Yeah, I replied, even though I didn't want her to. She turned to leave, then paused. Her fingers brushed my wrist as she passed. Barely a touch, almost accidental. but she didn't apologize for it. She just looked up at me, her gaze steady and soft in a way that felt dangerous. And as she walked back toward the porch, I realized something that scared me. I didn't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. After that night, I stopped going past her house. Not because I didn't want to, because I did. Too much. I told myself it was common sense. That it wasn't normal to think about your friend's mom while brushing your teeth. That it wasn't normal to replay the way her fingers touched your wrist like it was an accident that didn't feel accidental at all. So I went back to my routine. Work, home, laundry, cheap dinners that tasted like cardboard. Scrolling through my phone until my eyes hurt. But routine has a way of breaking when you start noticing what's missing. The next time I saw her was 3 days later, back at the laundromat. Same time, same quiet corner, same tired coffee cup in her hand. Except this time, she didn't smile when she saw me. She looked alert, like she'd been expecting something bad. I slowed down as I walked toward my usual washer. My heart started doing that stupid thing, like it wanted to jump out of my chest and embarrass me. She glanced at me, then quickly looked away. And for a second, I wondered if I'd imagined everything. The text, the porch light, the softness in her eyes. Maybe she regretted it. Maybe she'd woken up the next morning and remembered my age. Or remembered whose son I used to sit beside at her dinner table. I cleared my throat. Hey, she nodded once. Just that. Nothing else. Her voice was calm, but her hands weren't. She kept adjusting the lid of her cup, twisting it back and forth like it didn't fit right. I loaded my clothes slower than usual, stealing glances at her without meaning to. She stood near dryer 2, staring at the spinning drum like it had answers. I wanted to ask her what she meant. I wanted to ask her why she texted me. But instead I said, "You okay?" She laughed quietly, not amused, just tired. "I'm fine," she said. It was the kind of fine that didn't deserve to be believed. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "You don't look fine." Her eyes snapped to mine. Sharp, warning, like she was afraid of what might happen if she let me say one more true thing. "Ethan," she said softer now, don't ask. Don't care. Don't make me human." I swallowed. I nodded like I understood, even though I didn't. The laundromat door chimed then, and a gust of cold air swept in. A guy walked in laughing, Ryan. For a second, I didn't even recognize him. He looked different. Taller, broader, like life had hit him a few times and he decided to hit back. He spotted me instantly. "Yo," he called out, like we'd just seen each other yesterday. My stomach dropped. "Ryan," I said, forcing a smile. He walked over and slapped my shoulder too hard, like he was trying to prove something. His cologne was loud. His energy even louder. "Man, what the hell? You live around here now," he said. "I heard from someone you were renting near my old place." "Yeah," I muttered. "Just temporary." His eyes drifted past me, straight to her, and something shifted in the air. His smile tightened. "Mom," he said, not warmly, not lovingly, just like a word he'd learned to use without feeling it. She didn't flinch, but I saw her fingers tighten around her coffee cup. "Ryan," she replied. He looked between us, slow, measuring. "What are you doing here?" he asked her. "I do laundry," she said simply. His eyes narrowed, like he didn't like that answer. Then he looked at me again. "You two run into each other often?" he asked. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out right away. The question wasn't a question. It was a warning dressed up as casual conversation. Before I could speak, she answered. "No," she said quickly. "Not often." Too quick, too sharp, and I felt it, her pulling away, creating distance, building a wall with one sentence. Ryan's gaze lingered on her face. Then he shrugged. "Whatever," he muttered. "Dad's been asking about you." Her shoulders stiffened, just slightly. "I'll be home later," she said. Ryan smirked. "Yeah, sure." He turned back to me. "You still hoop. You should come by sometime." I nodded, even though we both knew I wouldn't. He walked away, tossing his clothes into a washer like he was mad at them. The laundromat went quiet again, but the silence didn't feel peaceful anymore. It felt watched. She didn't look at me for a full minute, just stood there, breathing carefully. Then she whispered, barely moving her lips. "I didn't want him to see you with me." The words hit harder than I expected. I stepped closer. "Why?" Her eyes flicked up. Her expression was strained, like she was holding back something ugly. Because, she said, voice shaking slightly, he'll assume the worst. And what's the worst? I asked too quietly. She didn't answer, but her gaze dropped to my mouth for half a second. Just half. Then she looked away like it burned. I felt my own body lean forward before my mind caught up. Not a decision, just instinct. She didn't move. Not away. Not closer. We stood there, inches apart, the hum of machines filling the space between us. Her breath caught. My hand lifted slightly, like I was going to touch her cheek. Like I was going to do something irreversible. And then her phone rang. Loud. Sharp. A sound that sliced through everything. She jerked back like she'd been slapped. Looked at the screen. And her face went pale. Ethan, she whispered, already stepping away. Please, she answered the call without looking at me again. And I realized, standing there with my hands still half raised, that we hadn't crossed the line. But we'd walked right up to it. And neither of us knew how to step back. After the laundromat, I stopped going. Not because I didn't want to see her. Because I didn't trust myself if I did. It was ridiculous, honestly. Like I was some teenager trying to avoid temptation. But it wasn't temptation. It was worse than that. It was the feeling of being close to someone and realizing you've been lonely for so long. You didn't even know what loneliness looked like anymore. So I changed my routine. I drove to a different laundromat across town. One that smelled like bleach and had broken chairs and nobody talked to anybody. It was perfect. I told myself it was mature, responsible, but it didn't feel like responsibility. It felt like punishment. Days passed, then a week. I didn't hear from her. No texts, no apologies. No, hey, sorry about Ryan. Nothing. And that silence started to feel personal, like she decided I was a mistake. Like she looked at me, really looked, and remembered the age gap, the history, the fact that she used to pack snacks for Ryan's friends like we were all stray animals she couldn't help feeding. Then one night, after work, I got home and found something sitting outside my apartment door. A cracked ceramic mug. White. Plain. The kind you buy at a discount store. Except I recognized it immediately. It was the same mug she'd been using at the laundromat. The one she always held like it mattered. Taped to it was a small folded note. My name written in neat handwriting. Ethan. My chest tightened before I even unfolded it. You left your jacket at the laundromat. I didn't know where else to bring it. I'm sorry. M. I stared at the note for a long time. I hadn't left a jacket. Not there. Not anywhere. But I understood what she was really saying. I'm reaching out. I'm pretending it's about something else. I picked up the mug carefully. The crack ran down one side like a vein. Then I looked up and down the hallway, half expecting Ryan to step out of the shadows like some kind of punishment. Nothing. Just quiet. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept the mug on my kitchen counter. Every time I walked past it, it felt like it was watching me. The next evening, I found myself outside her street again. Not pacing this time. Not lingering across the road like a loser. I walked straight up to the porch. The light was on. I hesitated at the door. My hand hovered near the bell. I told myself I'd leave. I told myself it was stupid. Then the door opened before I even touched anything. She was standing there like she'd been listening for my footsteps. Her hair was damp, like she'd just showered. She wore a soft sweater, sleeves pushed up, and her face looked bare. No makeup, no armor. She stared at me for a long second. Then she quietly stepped aside. Come in, she said. Inside, the house smelled like tea and dish soap. Familiar in a way that made my stomach ache. The living room was dim except for one lamp near the couch. The TV was off. Too quiet. Like the house was holding its breath. I didn't take off my shoes. I didn't know if I was allowed to get comfortable. She noticed. You can sit, she said, gesturing toward the couch. I sat on the edge like I was waiting to be told to leave. She walked to the kitchen and poured tea into 2 cups. Her movements were careful, deliberate, like she needed something to do, so she wouldn't have to look at me. When she handed me the cup, our fingers brushed. This time she didn't pull away. She sat across from me in the armchair. Not beside me. A safe distance. But her eyes kept drifting to me like distance didn't matter. I shouldn't have left that mug, she said finally. I looked down at the tea, watching the steam rise. Why did you? I asked. She swallowed. Her throat moved like the question hurt. I didn't want you to think I was ignoring you, she said. or that you were something I could just erase. My chest tightened at that. I forced a laugh, but it came out thin. You're good at erasing things. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Don't, she whispered. Don't what? Don't make me sound cruel. Her voice cracked a little. I'm not cruel, Ethan. I'm just scared. The words sat between us like a glass about to fall. I stared at her hands. She was twisting the ring on her finger over and over, even though it looked like it hadn't fit properly in years. Of him, I asked. Her lips pressed together. A pause. Of myself, she admitted. That hit harder than I expected, because it was honest. Too honest. I leaned forward slightly. I don't even know what you think is happening. Her gaze lifted slowly, and her eyes were glassy. Not crying, but close. I see you, she said. And I don't want to. My throat went dry. What does that mean? I asked, even though I already knew. She stood up suddenly, like sitting was making it worse. She walked toward the window and looked out at the street. Her shoulders rose and fell with a slow breath. You were Ryan's friend, she said quietly. You were a kid in my kitchen. I'm not a kid, I said. She turned her head slightly, and her voice came out low. I know. That was the problem. The silence after that felt like a door opening. I stood too without thinking. The space between us shrank. Not because we moved fast, because we stopped pretending we needed space at all. She faced me fully now, her hands at her sides, fingers slightly curled like she was holding herself back. I could see in her eyes. The war. Wanting. Resisting. Breaking. I took one step closer. She didn't move. Her breath caught. My hand lifted, slow, toward her cheek, and her lips parted like she was about to say something that would change everything. But instead, she whispered, barely audible, "What do you want from me?" Her question hung in the air like smoke. What do you want from me? It should have been easy to answer. A normal person would have said something clean, something safe. But my throat tightened, and all I could do was stare at her like she just handed me something fragile. I don't know, I said, and the honesty of it scared me. I think about you. Her face shifted. Not softness, not relief. Fear. Like she'd been waiting for me to say that so she could finally confirm her worst suspicion. She turned away, rubbing her forehead with the heel of her palm, like she was trying to erase the moment. Ethan, she whispered, you can't. That word, can't, hit me harder than no would've. Because no would've meant she didn't feel it. Can't mean she did. I took another step, slower this time. Why are you asking me what I want if you already decided? She looked at me then. Her eyes were glossy, and her mouth trembled like she hated herself for what she was about to say. Because I wanted to hear you say it, she admitted. And now I wish I hadn't. The room felt smaller. The air felt heavier. I was close enough to see the faint lines near her eyes. The exhaustion that lived there. The kind that didn't come from age, but from years of swallowing your own needs. I didn't touch her. I didn't push. I just stood there, breathing like I'd run a mile. And then she said it. Quiet. Flat. Like she was ripping off a bandage slowly. I'm still married. I blinked. What? Her gaze dropped to the floor. Not in the way you think. I let out a short laugh. More disbelief than humor. I don't know what way to think. She pressed her lips together, then walked past me into the kitchen. She needed distance. She needed something solid to hold on to. She opened a drawer, then closed it without taking anything out. Her hands were shaking. He moved back in, she said finally. 2 months ago. My stomach sank. Ryan's dad? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. She nodded once. I felt like I'd been pushed underwater. But you said I started. I said he wasn't a bad man. She cut in, and her voice sharpened for the first time. Not anger at me. Anger at herself. I didn't say he was gone. I stared at her, trying to understand how a person could look so alone in a house that still had a husband in it. She leaned against the counter and closed her eyes. He left for almost a year, she whispered. He was with someone else. And then he came back like it was nothing. Like I was supposed to be grateful he chose to return. My chest tightened. I didn't know what to do with the information. It felt too intimate, too raw. Like she'd accidentally handed me the darkest corner of her life. And you let him? I asked. She opened her eyes slowly. I didn't let him, she said. I just didn't have the strength to fight anymore. The silence that followed was thick. I wanted to tell her she deserved better. I wanted to say something brave, but I couldn't stop thinking about the fact that I'd been standing inches away from kissing a married woman, a woman who still lived with the man who raised my friend. I stepped back, just one step, but it was enough. She noticed. Of course she did. Her eyes flicked to my feet like the movement hurt her more than any words could. "I'm sorry," she said, barely audible. I shook my head. "No, I am sorry. I didn't know." She nodded slowly, like she'd expected this. Like she'd been bracing for the moment my face changed. And then she did something that made my heart drop. She smiled. A small, defeated smile. Like she was trying to make it easier for me to leave. "I shouldn't have let you in," she whispered. I swallowed hard. "Then why did you?" Her smile faded. Her eyes looked tired again. Because for a second, she said, "I forgot I was still trapped." That sentence stayed inside me like a splinter. I walked to the door without saying much. I didn't trust myself. I didn't trust my voice. At the porch, I paused. She stood behind me, not touching me, not asking me to stay. But her presence was there. Heavy, quiet. I turned slightly. "Do you want me to go?" Her eyes met mine, and the answer was there. Yes. No. Both. She opened her mouth like she might say something. Then footsteps sounded upstairs. A floorboard creaked, and her whole body stiffened. That was all it took. She stepped back fast, like the house had suddenly remembered what it was. I left. I didn't run. I didn't slam the door. I just walked down the porch steps into the cold air like nothing had happened. Like my chest wasn't burning. When I got home, I stared at my phone for a long time and typed a message. "I'm not angry. I just don't know where to put this feeling." My thumb hovered over send. Then I deleted it. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused, like life forgot to finish the sentence. I didn't see her for 12 days. Not at the laundromat. Not in the street. Not in the grocery store down the block, where the cashiers never smiled unless you were old enough to remind them of their parents. 12 days of trying to act normal. 12 days of waking up and checking my phone like it might have grown a message overnight. Nothing. And the worst part was, my life didn't fall apart without her. It just got quieter, like the universe had lowered the volume and expected me to be grateful. On the 13th day, I came home from work and found a small envelope taped to my door. No name, no stamp, just my apartment number written in that same neat handwriting. My stomach tightened immediately. Inside was a spare key and a note. "This is the key to the laundry room at the house. The lock jams. Ryan never fixed it. I don't know why I'm giving you this. Maybe because it's the only thing I can give without ruining everything." My fingers went numb around the key. I stood in the hallway for a long time, staring at it like it was a weapon. A key meant access. It meant trust. It meant she'd been thinking about me even while she stayed silent. That night it rained. Not a storm. Just steady, cold rain that made the streetlights look blurry and soft. The kind of rain that turns people into shadows. I don't know why I went there. Maybe because I couldn't stand another night of wondering if I was the only one who felt it. Maybe because the key felt heavy in my pocket, like it had its own pulse. Her porch light was on again. I stood under the awning, damp and stupid, and for a moment I almost turned around. Then the door opened. She didn't look surprised. She looked like she'd been waiting. Her hair was tied back, her face pale under the porch light. She wore the same cardigan from the night she took out the trash, like time had looped back just to punish us. "You shouldn't be here," she said. Her voice wasn't angry. It was tired. I nodded once. "I know." She stared at me, eyes flicking down to my wet hoodie, then back up to my face. "Ethan," she began. I pulled the key out of my pocket and held it up between us. Her breath caught. "I didn't ask for this," I said quietly. "But you gave it to me." She swallowed. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the door. "I didn't mean you did," I interrupted softly. Not harsh, just honest. "You meant something." The silence stretched. Rain tapped against the porch railing. Somewhere down the street, a car drove by too fast, tires hissing through puddles. She looked over her shoulder into the house, then back at me. "He's asleep," she whispered. The way she said it felt like a confession, like she was admitting she still lived inside a cage. I took a slow step closer. Still outside, still respectful, but close enough that she could feel my presence. "I'm not here to ruin your life," I said. I'm not here to do anything. Her eyes softened slightly, like she almost believed me. Then she gave a quiet, bitter laugh. That's the problem, she said. You're not here to do anything. You're just here. And it's making me feel things I don't have permission to feel anymore. Esther the hair. My throat tightened. Then tell me to go, I said. She didn't answer. She just looked at me for a long time, like she was memorizing my face for later. Like she already knew how this would end and wanted to take what she could before it disappeared. Finally, she stepped forward. Not all the way, just enough that we were standing in the same air. I miss being looked at like a person, she whispered. The words hit me like a punch. I felt my chest burn. I nodded slowly. I know. Her lips trembled. She blinked hard, like she refused to cry. I hate that it's you, she said. I hate that you're Ryan's friend. I hate that you're young. I hate that you're good. I swallowed. My voice came out rough. I'm not that good. Her eyes lifted to mine. Yes, she said quietly. You are. And I can't afford it. For a second, I thought she was going to close the door. I thought this was the part where she chose the safe life, the quiet suffering, the version of herself that didn't get to want anything. But instead, she reached out. Her hand touched my cheek. Warm, real, not romantic, just human. My entire body went still. I didn't move closer. I didn't lean in. I didn't take what she wasn't offering. I just let her touch me. And she held it there for a few seconds like she needed proof that she was still alive. Then she whispered, barely audible, I can't give you more than this. My throat tightened. I nodded once. Okay, I said. She let out a breath that sounded like relief and grief at the same time. Her thumb brushed my cheek once, slow, careful. And then she pulled her hand back like it hurt, like she was saving both of us from the next step. She stepped backward into the doorway. I'm sorry, she whispered again. I shook my head, still holding the key in my fist. Don't be, I said quietly. Just don't disappear. Her eyes glistened. She gave me the smallest nod. Not a promise. Not a lie. Just the closest thing to truth she could manage. Then the door closed. Soft. No Islam. No drama. Just a quiet ending to a moment that could have ruined everything. And somehow, that was what made it feel real. 3 months passed. Not the dramatic kind of passing where everything changes overnight. Just slow days stacking on top of each other. The kind where your life keeps moving, even when your heart is stuck on one quiet moment. I didn't go back to her porch after that night. I didn't text her. Not because I didn't want to, because she'd asked for something without saying it out loud. Don't make this harder. So I kept living. Work. Home. Laundry. The same tired meals. The same empty apartment where silence filled the corners like dust. But something had shifted in me. I wasn't chasing her anymore. I was waiting without demanding. And that was the first time I realized love isn't always about reaching. Sometimes it's about restraint. The first time I saw her again was at 8:47 a.m. I remember the time because it felt like the kind of detail your brain saves when it knows something matters. I was at the small park near Maple Street, the one with the cracked bench and the dead grass that never fully came back in winter. I'd stopped there on my way to work with a black coffee in my hand, staring at nothing, pretending I was fine. Then I saw her walking toward the bench. No muck-up, simple coat, hair tied back, and she looked lighter. Not happy, not glowing, just less trapped. She slowed when she noticed me. I didn't stand up. I didn't smile too fast. I just nodded once, like I wasn't trying to scare her away. She came closer, holding a thermos. She sat down beside me. Not too close, but close enough. The air between us was familiar now, like a room we'd both been in before. Hi, she said. Eruplia. For a minute, neither of us spoke. The world around us moved normally. Cars, birds, someone jogging past with headphones in. And still, it felt like everything had paused just for us. She opened her thermos and poured tea into the lid, the same way she always did. She offered it to me without looking. I took it. Our fingers brushed. This time she didn't pull away. I noticed her hand. No ring. Not even the faded mark where it used to sit. My throat tightened, but I didn't say anything. She stared straight ahead, watching a couple of kids kicking a ball around like they didn't know how lucky they were to be careless. Then she spoke, voice quiet. He moved out. I didn't react too quickly. I didn't want to make it feel like I'd been waiting for that sentence my whole life. But my chest still felt like it cracked open when I asked. 2 weeks ago, she said. He didn't fight. He just got tired. She paused, then added, or maybe I did. I nodded slowly. She turned slightly toward me, her eyes searching my face like she was afraid she'd find judgment there. You're probably thinking I'm a mess, she said. I let out a small breath of laughter. I'm not exactly a success story. That made her smile. A real one this time. Small, warm, like something finally unclenched. She looked down at her tea, then at my coffee cup. You still drink it black, she said. Yeah. Still stubborn, she murmured. Still nosy? I shot back. She scoffed quietly, and for a second it felt normal. Like we weren't something forbidden. Like we were just two people who happened to find each other at the wrong time. Or maybe the right time, just delayed. We sat there for a long time. No big talk. No dramatiken question. Just the kind of silence that didn't feel empty anymore. Then she reached in her coat pocket and pulled something out. A mug. The same crack mug. She'd glued it. It wasn't perfect. The crack was still visible, like a scar that didn't disappear just because you healed, but it held together. She placed it gently on the bench between us. I fixed it, she said. I stared at it for a moment, then looked at her. Why? I asked. Her voice came out softer than the air. Because I wanted to. That was all. Not I love you. Not I choose you. Just a simple truth. I reached over, took the mug, and ran my thumb along the repaired crack. Then I looked at her and said, You know this still isn't safe, right? She nodded. I know, she whispered. But it's mine now. I didn't answer. I just held the mug like it was something fragile and earned. And she leaned her head gently against my shoulder. Not a kiss. Not a promise. Just a quiet decision. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel lonely. I felt chosen. Later, when we stood up to leave, she took my hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. Like we'd been doing it for years. And as we walked away from the bench, I glanced back once at the spot where it all started. 8:47 a.m. Cold air. Tea in a thermos. A cracked mug that still held warmth. Some loves don't crash into your life. Some just arrive softly and stay.